As we come together tonight, all right, as we come together tonight, just a few words about justice and beyond. Just a few words about justice and beyond. We are a coalition, and we come together to fight and to educate and to advocate and to organize around the different aspects in our society, in our community, in our region, and even beyond the city of New Orleans in the river parishes to advocate for justice. And that happens on several levels. We fight for justice within our education system, within our criminal justice system, for our youth and youth justice, in our environment, and particularly standing alongside those who are fighting against the harmful petrochemical industries that are in our community, and on the basis of health itself. And so as we come together, I want you to know that Justice and Beyond has been doing this for almost a decade now. We started with fighting for justice for Chief Justice Bernadette Johnson, and started back was at Christian Unity for quite some time. Before the co-chairs at that time, Dr. Dwight Webster and Pat Bryant stepped down from leadership. We then set up a new model, and that new model would be called our pillar system. Pillars are those organizations or people as individuals that have stepped up and said that they want to be a part of the planning of Justice and Beyond, the vision of Justice and Beyond, and really organize alongside us. And so we need more pillars. We need those who are on this call to show up at our pillar meeting that is held every Tuesday at noon on this very same link so that you can add your voice to what needs to be done next, what programs need to be put on. We could use you, because our intent and our purpose is to elevate and to amplify the voices of Brown and Black people. And so we're happy to do that. Listen, as Valerie said earlier, some of you might have missed it, we are a space that operates in love, peace, and respect. And so we can disagree with one another, but we always show respect. And we want this to be a very safe place, not only as we talk, but also in the comments. So with that said, with no further ado, we're going to continue with our conversation on tonight. For that, I want to introduce to you Michael Esealuka. Michael, are you there?
I am, Pastor Manning. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Michael, how are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And Michael, because of your extensive work in the area of environmental justice, I'm sure that many that are on this call know you, but we're going to just take a moment just to bounce some things off and I'm going to throw some things at you so that people get to know you a little bit better. First of all, pronouns, so everybody knows that you prefer to be called by.
I use she or they pronouns.
Okay, she or they. And as we talk tonight, if you could just tell everybody about what you are, what fights and that you're involved in, and what organizations you're involved in, and what your passion is.
Thank you, Pastor Manning. So I've been organizing in Louisiana for about as long as I've lived here, which is about 10 years. And I work for Healthy Gulf, but I work for a lot of different groups as well, and in solidarity with a lot of different groups, specifically Gulf South for a Green New Deal and many of our other partners. My job is to go out and support frontline Black, Indigenous, Brown, and working class white communities as they resist the expansion of fossil fuels and fight for what I call the right to thrive, which I think is a fundamental right that all communities have. So I see myself as more of a support role, linking and connecting people across the state to fight for liberation.
All right, the right to thrive. I love that people not only just need to live, they need to be able to thrive as well too. And Michael, you also do some film and producing work and videography. Is that right?
Yep, I do. I'm a jack of many trades, as they say, and so I think we're going to watch one of the videos that I produced tonight. But I'll let you kind of speak about that, Pastor Manning, if you'd like.
Yeah, thank you. I've not seen it yet, so I'm excited to see it too. But yeah, jack of all trades. Michael is also does construction too, right, Michael?
Yes, That's right. As many of us on this call did, after the hurricanes hit our communities, we responded to disaster. And so when Hurricane Ida came, I linked up with Pastor Manning and many, many other organizers to found a group called Louisiana Just Recovery Network, which is still operating and going strong, helping Black descendant communities in the river parishes rebuild their homes and advocate for environmental justice. And so we work under the leadership of the environmental justice organizations in the river parishes, which are Rise St. James, Inclusive Louisiana, the Descendants Project, and the Concerned Citizens of St. John. They send us recommendations, and then we go out and help repair homes at no cost.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And churches as well, too, getting people back into their
That's right.
churches and rebuild those whole communities.
Right.
So with that said, I hope you all have gotten to know Michael a little bit more, and she'll share more with you, hopefully, as she takes over this guest moderator and position for now. And can you introduce or have the guests introduce themselves? I'm going to hand it over to you, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pastor Manning. So we've got two phenomenal organizers on the line with us today, and I'm proud to be here with them. Roishetta Ozane from Southwest Louisiana. She's the founder and director of the Vessel Project, and she's also a longtime community advocate who's been fighting for Black people and BIPOC communities and all communities for many years. We've also got Zach Kopkin from the Sierra Club, originally from Appalachia, but has come down to fight with here in another sacrifice zone in South Louisiana. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Roishetta, to speak a little bit about yourself, and then Zach.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michael. I don't know if I like coming after Pastor Manning's introduction of you, Michael. I mean, you're so amazing and are doing amazing things in the Plaquemines area and the greater New Orleans area. And we can only hope to do as much of the work in our communities as you're doing daily. And it's good to see so many people appreciate the work that you're doing, because I know a lot of times when you're out here on the front lines, you feel like, the work is overbearing and nobody is watching or nobody appreciates it. But it's good to be in a room of people who appreciate you so much. And I just want you to know that I'm one of those people. Thank you for having me here today. As Michael said, I am an organizer. That's what I like to be called. I have many other titles, and I do many other things, but I'm an organizer at heart and fighting for my community because I live here. I'm a mom of 6. My children live here, and I feel like my children have the right to live here for as long as they want, to raise their children here, their grandchildren here. And in order for us to see that come to fruition, we have to continue to fight for our communities. And as Michael said, make sure that the people living in those communities can thrive in those communities and grow. And so that's what I fight to do every day. And so thankful to be here. It's nice to see so many people on this call on a good Monday evening. So yeah, looking forward to this conversation.
I'll pass it over to you, Zach.
All right, thank you, Michael. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up for Michael, maybe? Cool. Hey, everyone. I use he, him pronouns. My name is Zach Kopkin. I live here in Bobancha, also known as New Orleans, Louisiana. And it's hard to express like what an honor it is to speak beside these two folks. I mean, I've learned so much from Michael and Roishetta, so I'm gonna try to speak or give them as much space to speak as I can, because really they're like mentors to me and also good friends. But I know I'm here and I'm on the agenda, so I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Like Michael said, I'm an organizer with the Sierra Club. I really like the way you put that, Roishetta. Like there are so many different titles sometimes that are assigned to us, but I really feel in my heart that I'm an organizer, and that doesn't come from a job, that comes from somewhere else. And I, like Michael said, have roots in Appalachia. I lived in Western North Carolina for about 10 years before coming down to the Gulf. And my grandparents are from northern Pennsylvania and experienced the earliest fracking boom in the United States. And so their story is really important to me. You know, their water is on a century farm in northern Pennsylvania, Bradford County, not safe to drink anymore. And I've also spent so much time studying labor and from coal to textiles, and I'll you know look to talk a little bit about that maybe later today. But I bring a lot of that perspective to the work I do here, and I see myself as someone who tries to connect the dots, connecting these communities to one another, and making sure that we're not isolated and that we're louder and more powerful together. So I just really appreciate being here, and I look forward to getting to know y'all. Thank you.
Thank you both for those introductions. And real quick, the meat of this conversation today is going to be talking about LNG, which stands for liquefied natural gas. And I just want to give a real quick explanation of what that is, just so we're all kind of starting out on the same page. And then we'll quick watch this short video about the fight in Southwest Louisiana before we'll give some more time to our speakers to share a little bit more about their stories. So liquefied natural gas, or LNG, is basically methane gas. It's extracted out of the land through the fracking process, and then it's cooled to sub-zero temperatures. So it's a gaseous form that's cooled to sub-zero temperatures, and then it's piped out to export terminals that export it. Where it's, you know, Louisiana has 70% of our energy grid reliant on natural gas, but most of the natural gas, or LNG, that's being exported right now is going to China, Southeast Asia, et cetera. It's going to other countries. And so many people are not aware of this, but right now the oil and gas industry is trying to save itself from it's trying to basically extend its life for another 10 to 20 years by doubling down on natural gas. They claim that it's a clean fuel. It's not. It's harmful to our communities. It's harmful to our coast. We have to stop it. And many people are not aware that right now Louisiana is facing the world's largest build out of fossil gas exports. And most of that build out is concentrated in Southwest Louisiana. And so right now there are seven proposed gas export terminals planned for Southwest Louisiana, and there's about 5 planned for Southeast Louisiana. I'm going to share my screen real quick so I can give y'all a sense of what the build out looks like. Let me know if you can see my screen right now. Can y'all see it? Okay.
Yes.
And so here's a map. And so you get a sense of where these facilities are going to be. So everything that's red is a facility that is proposed. So this is a massive build out that we're facing right now. And as we know in Louisiana, oftentimes, in fact, not even oftentimes, most of the time, fossil fuel build out is targeted for Black and Indigenous and vulnerable working class communities. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. And that's what these two organizers are fighting. So I'm going to show you this little video that we made to elevate the voices of 4 frontline leaders from Southwest Louisiana who are fighting oil and gas. I'm not gonna lie, New Orleans, we don't have the best internet, and so it might be a little bit laggy, but you should still be able to hear the audio as well. So I apologize if there's some lagginess, but you should still be able to hear the audio. So I'm gonna start it up right now.
It's like we're just this big sacrifice zone going down the Sabby River.
Like we're the dumping stock, all the gas industry. This is where all the money is flowing, but it's not flowing to our community.
What happens here on the Gulf Coast in the next 4 years really dictate what's going to happen on the planet in the next 50 years.
Lake Charles won't sit idly by and become an island and wiped off the Gulf Coast because of industry and their contributions to global warming. There are more than 20 projects proposed along the Gulf, with the majority of those projects being proposed here in Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas. It just seems like they've decided that this area is their dumping ground.
It really makes you wonder, like, why are they wanting to put them right here? And I think the answer is that they think that we don't care. They think that people are disposable, dispensable.
We just feel like you know, we've been made into a sacrifice. The people who are funding this crisis and funding these industry are the very banks that we put our money in. And so banks such as Bank of America and JP Morgan and Citibank, those banks are the banks that are giving money to the industry so that they can build these projects here.
If we don't do anything, we know what the future looks like.
The clock is ticking. It's now been 6 years since the Paris Climate Agreement was adopted, but a report from 6 NGOs called Banking on Climate Chaos found that in that time, the 60 biggest private banks in the world have financed $3.8 trillion in fossil fuels. Campaigners say that money has funded projects which have consequences for communities around the world.
So no new fossil fuel production starting today. That's like zero. Does your bank have a policy against funding new oil and gas products? Mr. Diamond?
Absolutely not.
Through banking crises and rubber stamp mergers, your banks dominate the banking industry. Together, you have over 13 trillion, $13,000 billion in assets. That's half the nation's GDP.
I'm Roishetta Ozane. I have been in Southwest Louisiana for 19 years.
I'm James Hyatt. I'm a resident of Lake Charles. I was born across the river there in Sulphur.
My name is Cindy Robertson. Serve justice, love mercy, walk humbly.
Lottie Loris, born and raised Lake Charles, Louisiana.
A lot of times people outside of the state only know New Orleans. When you talk about Louisiana, you talk about New Orleans. Well, if Louisiana is shaped like a boot, New Orleans is the toe, and Lake Charles is the heel of the boot. We're on the other side of the state.
There's birds and there's animals.
The food is excellent. Probably the best food ever.
Most important, my family is here.
So I have 6 children, 3 girls and 3 boys.
My kids love this area. I want them to be able to live here.
I don't ever want them to have to fight as much as I have to fight. The biggest problem we have here in Southwest Louisiana and Southeast Texas is the industries and the pipeline.
This river right here, this lake and the river is under a seafood advisory. You're not supposed to eat more than 2 meals a month of certain fish and crabs out of this estuary. And that is directly caused by these facilities who have polluted. And they don't pay to clean it up. They've never paid to clean it up. The fines that they get are like a slap on the wrist. Louisiana is sportsman's paradise. You know, we pride ourselves on the hunting and the fishing. Well, if you can fish, but you're not supposed to eat it, what's the point?
In 2020, industrial facilities in the state have dumped over 11 million pounds of toxic chemicals into our waterways.
This is going to have a cumulative impact on the health of our communities, and we need to do something about it now.
I've been on several calls with all of these banks and asked them, you know, why are they putting funds before families and policy before people and money before men and women. And if you look at their websites, a lot of them have these equity clauses and they go against them when they invest into the very industry that harm the communities that they claim they care so much about.
But they just tell you we want to be community friendly, but they're not. They're dollar friendly on the backs of the community. And that's all.
If you're going to continue to invest in these industries that come into our communities, poison our water, poison our air, and contribute to climate change, which increases the hurricanes that come here and the storms and the natural disasters that we get, then we're not going to put our money in your bank. We're not going to have accounts with you because our money is important. The money we're putting into your bank is the same money that you're giving the industry to come back and harm us.
We don't need industry. Industry needs us. You know, like we Lake Charles existed before any of these were built. This was a place of paradise to come swim and play, and a tourist place. Enough's enough. Defend SWLA.
All right, so yes, you can hear from those 4 frontline leaders. And I think what is really important in that video is not only that they call out the actual companies that are building these plants on our coast that are going to poison our people and escalate these storms, they also call out the banks that are profiting off of climate chaos. And I think that's very important for us to keep in mind, that it's not only the plants themselves, there are also other people that are responsible, that are making money off of environmental racism. And so now we have about 30 minutes for our speakers to talk before we open it up to questions from the audience. But I just wanted to prompt you both, Roishetta and Zach. Can you just talk to us a little bit about what it feels like to be organizers and frontline leaders in communities that are targeted for industrial development, and how you believe we need to be fighting back? And so first, I'm going to turn it over to you, Roishetta, and then you can pass it on to Zach.
Thank you for that, Michael. As stated in the video, you know, I live in Southwest Louisiana, and for many of you who haven't been to that part of the state, Southwest Louisiana is a 5-parish area that includes, it intersects Acadiana and Central Louisiana. So when you hear Sinla or Acadiana, we're Southwest Louisiana, and it is composed of 5 parishes: Calcasieu, Cameron, Jeff Davis, Allen, and Beauregard. Cameron Parish, Louisiana, is the largest parish, not only in Louisiana, but in the world, because we're the only place with parishes. So when you think about the land, how massive the land is in Cameron, you would think that this would be a beautiful place to go and visit the beaches, see some wildlife, go and see the wetlands that are natural to Louisiana. Yet when you first enter Cameron Parish, the first thing you see is Cameron LNG. You're met with smokestacks. You're met with flares. You're met with the smell that's unbearable. Anytime I go to visit Cameron, I get a headache. And at first, I just thought it was normal. I don't like going to Cameron Parish for anything. It's almost nothing there now. For it to be as massive as it is in land, there used to be over 10,000 people living there. Now people are in the hundreds, because so many times they've been hit by hurricanes or natural disasters to where people aren't rebuilding there. This is also where a large amount of our shrimpers are. This is where they do their business and earn a living for their families. But because of the industry that's there, they're having a hard time making a living off of what they've been doing their whole life, which is shrimping, catching oysters, fishing. And so a lot of those shrimpers and fishermen have left the area as well. The few that are left there are organizing with us against these oil and gas industries, because they see that they're losing profits and they're barely able to care for their families. So that's Cameron Parish. That's just one part of Southwest Louisiana. In Cameron Parish right now, there's a facility proposed called Commonwealth LNG. Commonwealth will take over a massive amount of our wetlands. Now, many of you who are native to Louisiana know that our wetlands are what protects us from the storm surges when we get hurricanes. Imagine if you have a sponge, if Earth is a sponge and the land is a sponge that soaks up water, and you've heard of condensation and evaporation and how the water is taken in by the plants and then it's released back into the atmosphere and it comes back down in rain. Well, if we don't have that land to soak that water up, where does that water go? It goes into our homes. It goes into the schools. It goes into those man-made buildings. Those buildings cannot soak up that water. So if we continue to build things on those wetlands, we don't have anywhere for that water to go. We don't have that natural land there either to block those storm surges when they hit. because those man-made buildings cannot withstand them like what God has put in place to block them. So that's just part of the issue that we deal with when we see Cameron Parish. That's not even counting Calcasieu Parish, which is overwhelmed with petrochemical facilities. I live in a town called Sulphur, Louisiana. Sulphur used to be home to sulfur mining, but there isn't any more sulfur mining there anymore. But you can tell that there used to be sulfur mining, and you can see all of the petrochemical facilities that are there now. When you're driving around town in Sulphur, it either smells like rotten eggs or it smells highly condensed with chlorine. We have facilities there like Westlake Chemical, which you saw in the video, that has had 3 explosions in the last 2 years, with several people getting hurt each time. That particular facility is in my backyard. In fact, one of the videos in the video that you saw was from me filming what happened because I was so close to it. Another facility we have in Sulphur in my backyard is Indorama. Indorama has been fined several times for not following protocol, for constantly flaring and for constantly releasing chemical toxic gases, but yet they continue to do it because these industries write those pennies that they have to pay in fines. They write that in. That's nothing to them. So that's not stopping them from harming and killing us. As you heard in the video, I'm a single mom of 6. So I not only do this for the community, I do this for my children so that they can live and breathe in their own community. I have 2 children that have asthma, and I have 3 children who have eczema. If you've heard of eczema, it's a skin condition to where you have rashes and dry patches of skin. Well, one of my children that has eczema also has a rare skin condition called Giannotti-Crossi syndrome. So she almost looks like she has vitiligo. Her skin is two-tone, but it's from the skin on her face and in her scalp are constantly flaring up from the air around her. It's an environmental disease that she has. The doctor didn't know what to do about it when they first came, so they pulled out that big dusty medical book to diagnose her. Yet that's where we live. We live by industry. And people ask all the time, well, why don't y'all move? We shouldn't have to move. It's our right to live here. Industry should not still be coming here. People cannot afford to just pack up and leave and pack up and move. And this is our home. This is where my children were born and raised. They have every right to be here, and I'm going to do everything that I can to fight for them. In the last several years, the United States has become the largest exporter of methane gas in the world. As you heard Michael E. talk earlier about methane gas, like fossil fuel pollution, it has a significant health impact on Black, Indigenous, people of color communities. They don't even know what all methane gas does to us. But I'm telling you, as a mom who lives near the industry, I'm seeing it every day with my children. Out of my 6 children, with the health conditions that they have, and me being the oldest of 5, none of me and my siblings having these conditions. None of us have eczema or asthma. My mom is the third oldest of 6 children. Her and her siblings don't have eczema or asthma. My grandmother doesn't have it, and neither did my grandfather. But the difference between me and my siblings, my mom and her siblings, and my grandparents is that I was born and raised in Mississippi. I was born and raised in Ruleville, Mississippi, in the Delta. If you've ever heard of Fannie Lou Hamer, I was born and raised in the home of Fannie Lou Hamer. We didn't have industry. We had cotton fields and we had catfish farms. Many people that I know worked at the catfish farms. Many people that I knew worked in the fields picking cotton still. Yes, and I'm only 38 years old, but people still worked in the cotton fields. People still worked picking beans, worked in the rice fields. This was the way of living in the Delta of Mississippi. This is how I grew up, my parents and my grandparents. We don't have all of those conditions. The only thing different, because I feed my children what we ate in Mississippi: greens, beans, potatoes, everything you grow in the garden. That's what my children eat. They don't drink a lot of sodas. I don't smoke cigarettes. My children don't smoke. We don't have a lot of other different chemicals and stuff in my house. I buy safe stuff, but yet my children have these conditions because we live near this industry. It doesn't take a scientist, a rocket scientist, to figure this out. And so that's why I fight every day. And that's what I'm facing. When I say things like this to the doctors, and I look at the cancer rates that we have in Louisiana, specifically in Southwest Louisiana now, because I know we have Cancer Alley in the greater New Orleans area, but Southwest Louisiana is becoming the new Cancer Alley when you look at the number of cancer patients and the number of children with asthma and cancer. But in the state of Louisiana, they attribute that to cigarette smoke and the amount of people who smoke cigarettes. And then they say, well, you can't say exactly what's causing this particular cancer or this particular condition. And so we go back and forth with them in a state where people can barely live, not only because of minimum wages. We don't even have a minimum wage in this state. I don't even think people realize that if there was not a federal minimum wage, Louisiana as a state does not have a protected wage for its citizens. If someone is not happy about the amount of money that they make every day, they have to take it to the federal level. So we can't afford to live here. We can't breathe here. We can't drink water here. Yet we're expected to be resilient, as they call us, every time there's some sort of disaster. When is enough going to be enough? Why is it the same communities are overburdened by the same things all the time? What is at the core of it? And what's at the core is the color of our skin. It's the fact that we are Black, Indigenous, people of color communities, low income communities, and the way that the system has been set up to fail us. And so what can we do about it? You know, you heard me say that I'm just an organizer. You heard Michael say that. You heard Zach say that. You can be an organizer too. And many of you are probably already organizers. And like my grandmother didn't know. I remember when my grandmother used to cook on Sundays after church, and everybody would come to her house and eat. And they would sit around talking about who was running for mayor, who was running the local elections, and how they were going to knock on doors and canvass and phone bank. And then if something was happening in the community, they would all get together and she would cook and they would talk about it. That's organizing. When you have friends and family over and you're talking about community issues and you figure out a way that you can address that issue, whether it's hunger, whether it's planning a diaper drive, whether it's helping someone pay their light bill, giving your neighbor a ride to the polls to vote, you are an organizer and you're making a difference in your community. And that's what it's going to take for us to change the trajectory of the state of Louisiana. We have to all work together and do our individual parts, because individually we're doing the most that we can. But when we put all of that together collectively, it makes a big difference. You know, when you look at Devontae as the PSC, as a public service commissioner for District 3, I live in District 6, I think, for the public service commissioner. But I was just as important as in getting Devontae elected as anybody in District 3, because we had to donate to their campaign. We had to make sure his campaign was public. We had to make sure everybody across the state and neighboring states knew that we were trying to get Devontae elected, because all the odds were against him. The Democratic Party was doing things. The governor of the state was doing things. Everybody was against Devontae winning, but yet he won because he had a pool of people behind him. And that's what it's going to take. Everybody doing something. And so you heard us talking about the banks. You may think, well, I only have $2 in Chase Bank. That ain't gonna make a difference. I promise you, if all of us pull our $2 out at one time, Chase is gonna feel it. You don't have to have millions in these banks, because your $2 is helping them. It is combining with the $2 billion they're investing in those industries that are harming our communities. Cut that card up. Go and get an account at a credit union where you know the person who works there. Miss Sue granddaughter worked at the credit union. You've been knowing her since she was a little girl. She can tell you all about your account, how to fix your credit, how to get a loan. You can't walk in Chase Bank. You don't know those people. Even if you know the people who work in Chase Bank, they have very little say over how Chase does his business. Not just Chase, Citibank. If you have investments in places like BlackRock and Vanguard, I don't think we have people on here who have investments in those companies because I can't afford to invest in them. Pull that money out and see don't they start calling you. And when they call you, you say, you're investing in climate chaos. You're killing Black, Brown, Indigenous, low-income communities, and I don't want to put my money there. They care about their images. They care about their clients when it comes to their clients' money. As long as your money is in there, they don't care anything about you because they have what they want. But when you take it away, that's when they start calling. What else can you do? That's right, call those banks like Zach said. What else can you do? When there's a hearing, and I know Michael lets her community know, I know Zach lets the community know, and I let the community know. When there's a hearing, show up. You don't have to say anything. There's power in numbers. Somebody in that group gonna say something. You don't have to be the one to say anything if you don't like to speak, but be there to support them. If you like to pray, pray for them. If you like to give hugs, give them a hug. Bring them some food, bake them some cookies, because somebody is gonna say something. And when they say something, they need you behind them because it's very intimidating when you're standing in those hearings and it feels like you're on trial for your life. You need somebody to turn to and look at that smiling back at you. Somebody who is there fighting with you. Somebody who cares just as much about the community as you do. Show up. I know Inclusive Louisiana shows up to every public meeting there is. And a lot of times it's just those three ladies. Why isn't anyone else showing up? Somebody mad that there's holes in the road, but nobody shows up but those three. Somebody is upset about the schools, nobody show up but them. Somebody is upset about the evacuation route in St. James Parish, nobody show up but Miss Sharon. We have to start showing up. We cannot continue to ask for a seat at the table. And when we get that seat at the table, we don't use our voice. We don't use our power. We don't use what we have. Each of us are experts in our own right. What are you an expert at? Maybe you know how to sew and you feel like what me sewing got to do with anything. You see, I don't know if anybody has on a shirt today that says stop LNG. Somebody had to make those shirts. We paid a lot of money for those shirts. Just imagine if you was at home sewing, that money could have went to you. Somebody may be an artist. How can I help as an artist? We have billboards across the state. Somebody had to design those billboards. You like to paint? Paint it. Paint murals across the city to beautify the city, to show this is what we want our city to look like. We don't want to see smokestacks and industry. We want to see art. You write songs, you write poetry. We need that all the time because we tell our stories through poetry and songs. That's what we as Black people have been doing our whole lives from the cotton fields. When we were singing in the cotton fields, we were telling our stories. We were singing escape songs. We were telling the next person how to get free. Sing your songs, write your music, play the guitar, paint something, sew something. Cook a meal for those folks who are out there canvassing in the hot sun, door knocking, trying to get people to go vote. And when you promise the people you're going to go vote, or you're going to go to the hearing, or you're going to go to the meeting, show up because your word is all that you have. If we want to see change, we have to be the change that we want to see. It starts with us. What difference are we making in our own communities? Now, I will say, after saying all of that, that you may think things like starting a recycling center, that's wonderful. Because you think about the pollution, the amount of pollution, the amount of toxins, and you might say, well, I'm gonna start a recycling center and I'm gonna start collecting all the plastics. That's gonna be wonderful and that's gonna be your part. But let me just say that you throwing that plastic bottle in the trash, if you don't start a recycling center, is not even it's not even 1% of the problem that we have when it comes to pollution. Those industries that you look at every day, that's what's causing the pollution. Not everyday individual people who choose to drive gas cars. Yes, we're contributing, but the amount and a massive amount of pollution that they're doing, it far outweighs what each individual person is doing. You continue to do your part and make a difference where you are, but know that together, that each of us are doing those little things. Together, those things are big, and together we will make a huge difference and a huge impact in our communities, and hopefully that will trickle over to other communities. We are the state of Louisiana. I know a lot of times we like to look at different regions. We like to look at different areas of the state. New Orleans get a lot of attention, but Louisiana is the state. And together is how we have to work. We have to be together. We have to be inclusive, like Inclusive Louisiana says. We have to rise like Rise St. James say. We have to be vessels like the Vessel Project, and we have to let our goodness flow through us and into our communities so that we can have a just recovery, like Louisiana Just Recovery, and we can go towards that better. We don't have to be resilient our whole lives. There is a better for Louisiana. We will not let Louisiana disappear like some of the smaller communities did after Hurricane Katrina. There were whole communities that disappeared that aren't here anymore. Katrina taught us a lot, that we should have looked to the future to say we don't want that to happen again. So what are we doing today? And I know I'm probably over time, and Michael is probably like, I don't know why I let Roishetta go first, but I go from one thing to the other because, like I said, I have a lot of titles, and so I be trying to cover a lot of topics. But at the end of the day, the message I want you to leave with today is that you as an individual can do whatever you can do. You are an expert at. Everybody's an expert at something. It can be talking, listening, hugging, drawing, writing, whatever it is that you love to do, that you can do the best at. Do that thing and let that thing work towards this just transition that we're trying to get to. Thank you. Zach, your turn. You probably got a second left.
Roishetta, thank you for that. And honestly, don't even worry about going over time, because what you just shared with us is some serious, serious wisdom straight from the front lines in Southwest Louisiana, and we all need to hear that. So I tried to capture some of the powerful things that you said in the chat, so y'all can return to those over the course of our conversation. But yeah, thank you so much for that. And I want to pass it over to Zach. And Zach, I'll pose a similar question. You know, what does it mean to be a sacrifice zone? How are you feeling, especially coming from another sacrifice zone, which is Appalachia, where they're doing mountaintop removal and forcing people to get black lung and dying in the coal mines to make profit for industry. It's a similar story as we face down here in the Gulf, just different locations. And so how does it feel to you to be fighting against LNG? And then what kind of lessons do you have to share with the group?
Sure, thanks, Michael. I also saw Raymond's comment. If y'all want to come off mute, I will not mind. If you want to give Roishetta some applause.
Yes, we should. Let's do that. All right, y'all. I missed that, but if everyone can come off mute right now, we need to give Roishetta a round of applause. Okay, everybody. Woo! Woo! Thank you, Roishetta. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
Oh, and thanks for putting your contact info down there, Roishetta. I'll do the same after I speak. Wow, that's a lot to follow. Thank you for the question, Michael. Thank you for giving me something tough to follow, Roishetta, and for doing this with me together. To be honest, I am a white cisgender man, and I am paid to be an organizer in the South, and so I think I'm trying to come a little bit from that perspective when I talk about an answer to that question, Michael. That just like Roishetta said, we all have something to do, every single person, and for me, the most important word in how I think about my work is the word solidarity, and knowing that all of our fates are bound up with one another's. I learned that word a lot from having grown up Jewish in Atlanta, the site of one of the worst lynchings of a Jewish person in the United States, in the town that I grew up in. And so, but regardless of our identities, we all have this fight in common. And I'm really struck when I've seen, for example, crossing into Westlake in Calcasieu Parish, across that bridge. It's unbelievable is not the right word, but it is shocking, just to see the expanse of petrochemicals next to homes, and to know that there's people I care about now, having done this work, who live there, and who have the same dignity and expertise and right to thrive that Michael named at the beginning of this. And it does remind me of the first time I saw a coal mine, a strip mine, and just the expanse of it, and that it didn't even look like something on this planet. And yet at the same time, I think one of the things that I've learned a lot from folks, Justin Soleil, who's actually here, said it really well recently, that sometimes being called a sacrifice zone can obscure what is so special about these places as well. And it's important that when we talk about our communities to the outside world, when they ask, why don't you leave? Sure, a lot of times, it's not easy to leave when Hurricane Ida is bearing down on you, whether you have a week of notice or an hour of notice. And a lot of folks, myself included, before having lived here, did not fully appreciate how wrong-headed that statement is, to just say, well, why did these people get out? But there are reasons to stay as well. And like James pointed out in the video, food and culture. And so we put a lot of our effort, I think, as organizers, me, Michael, Roishetta, Justin, other folks who are on this call, not on this call, into celebrating our communities and into celebrating our common humanity, and into seeing and hearing each other, and to showing the world that something I've heard a lot is, we may go down, but we're going to go down fighting. That people aren't willing to give up and let go of these places because they're theirs, and they can't imagine life anywhere else. It wouldn't be the same. Learn a lot about the spiritual connection that people have to the places they're from, the importance of ancestry and heritage. And so just through those stories, even though they're not necessarily my stories, I have stories like that. And I've been brought in, and I have that same fire about fighting for these places now, because there's people I love and places that I love too. So I think love's a really important part of this fight, and just being open and saying these things out loud, that it's really scary to do in a place like Louisiana, where industry has so much power, where white supremacy has so much power, where bigotry and other forms of hate are so strong and prevalent. But like Roishetta has said, when we do that together, we're able to break through that silence and actually start having these conversations, and seeing that we can imagine a different future, and then we can get to work actually creating it. So I've just had that experience multiple times, being in places like Brownsville, Texas, in a bar in Lake Charles, and and just talking about the things that we've been seeing, and folks just gravitate. They come and sit down, they want to talk. They want to say, you know, I've been thinking that forever and I've never heard anyone say it out loud. And so I think for us, it's so important to build community, to celebrate, to love one another, and then be able to build that strength to say those things out loud, and then bring people into that, and to know that we have that people power, and that a different kind of resilience, not the resilience just to endure things, but to care for each other, and to know that no matter what comes, that we're there for each other. So I think that's really critical to the LNG fight. And you know, we might not win every single one of these things. I had to come to terms with that sometimes as well. But we're still going to be here, and so that is something that I think gives me and a lot of the folks around me strength that they've taught me. Is that I've learned this from Taprooter. If they talk about, rather than 2030 comes, and we know from the climate science 2030 is sort of this tipping point, and then the story's over if we don't do exactly what the scientists say we have to do. It's actually what they're calling a liberation horizon, and you should talk to Colette Bichon Battle, or you know, folks from Taproot about that. But the story's not over. The story's not over when 2030 hits. It's not like we drop off the end of the world, but actually we should look at that as an opportunity to fight even harder, to be even stronger, to build bolder visions, to get deeper into our values, to become deeply more connected with each other, and to know that we will survive those things, and that, you know, whether in our generation or in future generations, that vision that we have is going to come true. So that's what keeps me going in work, and so much of that comes down to stories, and to just you know, spending time with elders, and seeing the fight that they've done, and the legacy that they've made possible for each of us, and knowing that the work isn't done and that we've got to carry it on.
Wow, thank you both so much. I had to go off camera for a second because I'm not gonna lie, sometimes when I'm in these types of meetings, when you're hearing directly from frontline leaders, I shed a few tears, and but yeah, I really appreciate you sharing those powerful stories. I think there's a couple threads to draw out of that that we're hearing from both Roishetta and Zach. And I think one of the most important things is two things. One, we are in solidarity. Roishetta said that she is from Rowville, Mississippi, which is the home of Fannie Lou Hamer. And if you know one thing about Fannie Lou Hamer, she became a movement activist at the age of 45, and she changed the world. And she said that we can't get free until we're all free. And so that's something that we have to really understand and internalize in Louisiana. And you know, and they both Roishetta and Zach emphasized that every single one of us has a role to play, big or small. If you like to cook for your family, if you like to talk to your neighbors, if you like to make art, if you like to throw parties, if you like to knock doors, you have a role to play in this climate crisis, and we need every single one of us. And actually, I will just share, Zach didn't mention it in his talk, but before we pass it over and open up to the audience Q&A, I want to just share something that Zach told me that I thought was very meaningful. And he said that every organizer was once asked to do something, you know, knock on a door, sign a petition, make a flyer, whatever. Every single one of us was once asked to do something, and that started us on a path and a journey that changed our lives. So never be afraid to make the ask, and never be afraid to bring more people into our fight, because we are fighting for our communities, for our region, for our home, but we're also fighting for the planet. So I am going to open it up to audience questions. And yeah, just jump in the chat. If you have a question, feel free to just share it in the chat, and I'm going to read through them. I think we have about 30 minutes left, so we'll try to take maybe just a few more questions so that we can give our speakers plenty of time that they need to really explore their ideas. So feel free to jump in the chat. If not, I have a question prepared for you, which maybe we can get started with right now while we're waiting for other folks. And my question is, we often say down here in the Gulf South that we need to follow the front lines. And so I would ask you, Roishetta and Zach, what does it mean to follow the front lines? Who are the front lines? Why do we need to be doing this? And so Roishetta, I'll kick it over to you, and then you can pass it on to Zach. And then after that, it looks like Lane has raised their hand. So Lane, if you don't mind just dropping your chat, dropping your question in the chat, that would be.
Who are the front lines? So, first I'll say that the front lines are on the call today, and it's not just myself, Michael, or Zach, the speakers, but every person on this call. If you, on your way home, pass by industry, if you can look out your window and see industry, if when you take a deep breath, you breathe in toxins and chemical smells, if you don't drink the water from your water faucet and instead buy cases of water or have a water filtration system, you're the front line. And you're probably Black, brown, indigenous, a person of color, or a low-income working class individual. All of those are frontline people. How do we solve this crisis? We come and talk to the folks who are living in the crisis, and we have the answers because we live with it every day. Come to my community, come to Sulphur. I'll tell you how to solve the Sulphur water crisis. I'll tell you why the water is so polluted. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see, like I told you earlier. When you have 12 petrochemical facilities on one street, that's why the water is polluted. That's why we can't eat fish out of the estuary. We know the answers because we live in the community. We live with the problem every day. A lot of us, like I said, are organizers, but we didn't know it. So these big green groups, these environmental organizations, these funders need to come to our communities and stop asking us for stuff for them. Stop asking us to do stuff for them, and they need to come and ask us, how can I help you? What do you need? And the people who are doing the work every day, who are getting very little to no pay, because I know my brother Justin that's on this call knows what I mean when I say working every day with little to no pay at all, barely can afford to live in the same community that you're fighting for. Pay these people. Miss Sue is feeding the homeless every day with her own money that she gets a check once a month. But yet every day she got a hot meal for the homeless. Go find Miss Sue. She cares about her community, and pay her and help her to organize, train her, educate her, teach her how to write comments when it's a comment period. Teach her what to say at these hearings. Teach her how to fight for her community. Nobody knows what LNG stands for. Nobody knows what methane is. I bet it's only a few people on this call who know what the acronym CCS stands for, and the few of us who know what CCS stands for know what it means. I know what it stands for, I know what it means, and I still can't really tell you whether to be for it or against it because they make it sound so good. So go to the communities, the people who live by the industry, the people who have water drinking problems, the people who can't breathe their air, the people with the asthma and the cancer. That's the front line. That's the answer to your question somewhere in there, Michael.
Thank you for that, Roishetta. And I'm gonna pose this question actually to you, just in the interest of time. I'm gonna pose this to you, Zach. Mr. Leon said, what is your strategic and tactical plan to defeat this oppressor class? So can you talk a little bit about the strategy that our movements are using to fight back against fossil fuel executives and climate chaos profiteers?
That question for me, Michael. That is a big and challenging question. Mr. Leon, thank you for asking it though.
We could have a whole other Justice and Beyond webinar just on that question. So, but maybe try to just bring the top line things to the
Right. Yeah, I think it's probably kind of the mission of Justice and Beyond to figure out some of those answers. But I think that to me, many strategies are necessary. So we need diversity of opinions and perspectives and tactics. I agree with Josh to awaken class consciousness. That's a really good answer. But what are we doing right now? Because I could go off on anarchism and communism and stuff, but I think those are relevant here. It's helpful to think about those things, but specifically here in this case, I don't know. I think it comes back to just building people power, like every time. How are we going to get, like Roishetta said, politicians to actually come and want to know what the people need and to serve the people? It's people power. I mean, and maybe our vision for some folks is that those politicians aren't, we have a totally different political system. That's going to take people power too. And maybe getting the politicians to come and talk to the people is a step along that continuum. I'm not going to tell you what your goal should be, but I think that people power is the way to get there. And I really appreciate Michael mentioning earlier, like calling out the people who are the cause of the problem. There is a lot of sort of popular education that's really important. You know, being able to map out our communities and see who that oppressor class is, and make sure that we know who they are, and that they can't hide, and they can't pull the wool over our eyes. And to do that, I think it comes down to making films. It comes down to picketing, labor organizing, and reducing their power that way. I think there's just so many tactics, but one thing that I really focus on myself is how do we connect all those pieces in a way where we have a shared vision, and that power multiplies each other instead of, you know, labor being somehow opposed to, you know, abolitionist stuff. Those two things don't need to be separate from one another. And so how can we combine all those fights? And it takes that solidarity that I think I was talking about. And I mean, it's really, really hard. But the celebration is so important to it, honestly. Building the shared foundations of like who we are. We share this place in common. We're going to fight for it. I think is indispensable. So I'll try to stop there, but we certainly could talk about some of the specific tactics. And I've got some calls to action and things like that. So that'll answer some of the things that we're doing in like the next month and a half to make an impact on those in the short term. Because I know that, you know, we can talk about these things all day, but what's our actual sort of plan of action is a challenge, and it's always a process of learning and trying new things.
Yes, and hopefully we'll have a short amount of time towards the end of the call to talk about some immediate next steps, immediate actions that we have planned all over South Louisiana later this month. But so my next question comes from Lane, and I will ask, in the interest of time, please just type your questions into the chat and I'll read them. So Lane asks, and Roishetta, you can answer this: what parts or what aspects of the fossil fuel company's conduct is regulated or controlled or affected by the Louisiana Public Service Commission? And what can we specifically lobby for or against with the PSC? And so you can answer, and then if there's anything else that I can add, I'll follow you up.
Okay, so when you're thinking about the PSC, so I'm just learning about what the PSC can do. But when you think about the energy costs for the state of Louisiana, and how much individuals are paying for their energy bills, you think about the fact that the PSC has, you know, helps to regulate that. And those costs are directly related to hurricane impacts and what happens after we have all of these storms. So for example, in Southwest Louisiana, we had 2 hurricanes followed by a freeze, followed by a flood, and followed by tornadoes, right? So you had a few months where we had a lot of damage done to our system, to our power grid. Well, who do you think eats up that cost? Citizens, because then they go back and they put those costs into our bills. Well, if the Public Service Commissioner can get the state to see that the reason why those costs are going up is because of the disasters that are here, and we can link those disasters to climate change, because that's what's causing the disasters to be so frequent and so monstrous, and what's contributing to our climate change. We know that what contributes to climate change are the different gases that are produced by the fossil fuel industries. Right now, the state of Louisiana is the largest producer of methane gas in the world, not in the United States. I just came from Egypt at COP27, where the state of Louisiana won the fossil award because we use more fossil fuels than anywhere in the world. What does that mean for climate change? What does that mean when you hear things like 2030 and 2050? If you've never heard of 2030 and 2050, 2030 is when we're supposed to be at net zero emissions as it pertains to carbon. 2050 is when there's supposed to be this major shift in the world because of the amount of greenhouse gases that we're using and the amount of fossil fuels that we're using. It's supposed to be doomsday. Now, I know that's scary to think about, and a lot of times people feel like environmentalists and green groups use scare tactics, but this is all science-based and proven that if we keep going in the direction that we're going, that there will be a major shift in the way that this planet works. We will see more storms. They will increase in size. They will increase in how detrimental they are. So with all of these facts, with these scientists and this data and these statistics, we like to say numbers don't lie. If we can get the PSC, the Public Service Commissioner, to show this to our other elected officials and our rule makers here in the state of Louisiana who champion for oil and gas because they're profit hungry, because they want the money and they don't care about the people. If we can get them to see that we cannot afford any more oil and gas infrastructure in this state, anywhere in the state, we cannot afford to be guinea pigs. Oh, and let me just say that we aren't even as good as guinea pigs because, guinea pigs are tested. We aren't even tested. We live near these industries every day. We breathe in these chemicals. We drink that toxic water, and no one is testing us. No one had the audacity to say, if we're going to put these plants in these people's communities, at least we're going to follow them and see what effects it causes. Nobody did that. That's why when we go to the doctor with the issues that we have, they can say, oh, that's probably from something else. That's probably genetic, because no one has followed it, because guinea pigs are more important than us. We can't afford to be test tube dummies and allow things like carbon capture and storage to come into our communities. So we need every system of government, every elected official, anyone who has a platform, whether you're a pastor, whether you're Ms. Sue who works in the public library. We need everyone educating as many people as they can, using their platform, using their power to say that this is what the state of Louisiana is facing. And this is how we're not only impacting our men and women in our communities, but this is how we're impacting the world. There are entire countries who are impacted by the choices we make in Louisiana. The oil and gas that we're extracting here, we're not even using. We're exporting it to somewhere else where they don't even want it. We're blaming it on Ukraine. We have activists here in the United States, right now in Texas at Sarah Week, from Ukraine, who are saying we don't want this from the United States. They are trying to move towards more economically sustainable ways of getting their energy. But yet that's what our people are telling us. So the answer was in there somewhere. Again, I'm sorry that I'm so passionate about this, but this is just what it is. We as Louisiana citizens, as people on the front lines, we have been bamboozled for too long. And it's not even simply about opening up a book or watching the news, because that's who's fooling us. That's where the trickery comes in at. You have to know this from your own lived experience. If you know you have cancer, or your sister, brother, child has cancer, asthma, and you know that these things haven't been in your family, but yet you pass by industry every day going to work, or industry is in your community. Again, it don't take a rocket scientist to see where it's coming from. So
thank you for that, Roishetta. And I think we have 3 more people with questions. And I'm hearing not everyone has the capacity or the capability to type it in the chat. Of course, Reverend Manning is visually challenged, as we all know. Thank you, Reverend Manning, for still fighting for us as hard as he possibly can and doing more than most people who have full vision. So Reverend Manning, I will turn it over to you to ask your question, and then Akin Chile, and then I would invite Robert, who is a original resident of Lake Charles and has been living in Louisiana and fighting for us for 80 years to speak. So those 3. So first you, Reverend Manning.
Just real quick, Michael, and it's not so much a question, but a comment. I just want people to understand clearly that the issue with liquid natural gas affects all of us, because we see its effect on our utility bills, on our energy bills. So while these pipelines may be outside of our communities, and that doesn't exclude us from being concerned. We should be concerned because it always affects all of us in humanity. But know that you are directly affected because of the export of natural gas, in this new innovation that we've never seen before. Allows our prices on our energy bills to go higher. So therefore, what we must advocate for is that energy move more towards renewable energy sources and wean itself off of fossil fuels. And so I just wanted to make that very clear to people, because I don't think sometimes we get that, because if the price of our utility goes up, then it puts us in poverty more. Putting us in poverty more means that we may have some that turn towards doing criminal activity just to supply the family's needs. That leads people into the prison, industrial complex, and all of these racist systems are tied one to another. So don't ever think that you're not too far from the direct results of LNG. Just wanted to make that very clear.
Thank you for that, Pastor Manning. And I'm just going to very briefly respond to some of the conversations that's come up in the chat. You are absolutely right, Mr. Leon. We cannot talk about this problem to death. We cannot also engage in paralysis by analysis, where we're constantly researching just to get the language to prove what communities on the ground have known has been happening to them for generations. So yes, we need research. Yes, we need policies, but most importantly, we need a plan, an strategic organizing plan. And so in the environmental justice movement in Louisiana, what we do is we say that we fight in every arena that's available to us. And so we use litigation to challenge permits. We do on the ground organizing. We do base building work through mutual aid. We do robust communication so that we are lifting up the voices of the front lines to not just a national audience, but an international audience, which is why we're creating these videos. We're trying to put these on the map. Roishetta is out here flying all over the world to put Southwest Louisiana on the map. And we are increasingly targeted the what I would call climate chaos profiteers, the people who are directly profiting off of the climate crisis. And so we are fighting in every single arena with a multifaceted strategy that has a very explicit analysis about who is at fault, who are the communities that are being sacrificed, and what is the combination of lobbying, electoral pressure, but also radical grassroots organizing and communications and storytelling and cultural preservation. So I hope that will just real quickly in that 2 minutes answer your question, and then maybe we can have some more follow-up conversations about that. But I wanted to pass it over to Mr. Akinchile to ask his question, and then Robert will close it out if that's all right with answer the last question, if that's all right with everyone, and then I will turn it over to Pastor Manning to close us out. So go ahead, Mr. Akinchile.
All right, on a reality check, and good evening, everyone. We had two comrades who were working in environmental justice down in Atlanta, trying to deal with the forest issues and destruction posing climate change. They are now listed as terrorists. So what I'm bringing to your attention that was not mentioned, that even the politicians that they send to speak to the throngs of people who have questions are doing a two-step sideshow move. So we can't rely on politicians. We can't rely on them simply because our fault is we make no demands. What I mean by that, and I'll be brief with this, as long as we keep going, asking them and begging them to do for us what they consciously know needs to be done to clean up the climate change, because let's be realistic. The US, UK, France created this mess. Industrialization created this mess, killing us. It's called mass genocide. So unless we take the steps to seize control, empower ourselves en masse, being educated, scientifically practicing the steps for our own self-determination, because they will never, never do for us what we need to have done. They cater to the corporations. They cater to the big dollars who don't have to live down here like you and me, don't have to breathe the air or eat the food that subsequently kills us. So my question to you is, has there been a planned strategy for all environmentalists to come together as one force? The only way we're going to do anything is to come together as a force. We're in a war. Thank you.
Michael, let me answer him. I know, environmental justice and climate change issues are complex. And when you think about the complexity of the issues, and you think about the fact that many of the things that we face in our communities are all intersectional. You think about social justice, you think about food insecurities, you think about the fact that these same communities have low or poor access to public transportation, education issues, health disparities. It's so many issues that are occurring in the same communities. These same frontline, fence line communities are facing so many issues. So as I stated earlier, each one of us has a platform. You might have someone who is better at speaking to the social justice aspect of the fight. Someone may be better at speaking to the food insecurity aspect of it. What the issue is that it's so many issues and it's so many organizers and activists fighting across the world, which is why you heard me say I just came from Egypt. I'm in DC right now. I'm in DC for two reasons. I'm in DC to speak at the Oxfam International Women's Day event tomorrow with Colette Pichon Battle. And then Thursday, I'm here for the hearing about the train derailment in Ohio. And then I'll be going to Europe and to Canada, because there are so many issues and so many people fighting that it's almost impossible to get all of these people in one place. Because as you stated, sometimes We're deemed as terrorists. People have been arrested for fighting for what's right. So sometimes people don't want to come together. Sometimes people don't want to be out front. They don't want to be seen because of that fear that has been placed in them. But believe me, people are coming together and fighting. When we went to COP27 in Egypt, Justin is here. He was in Egypt with me and several others. There were so many of us in Egypt, and we represented well for every community that was in the United States that could not be in Egypt. I promise you. So we keep having these conversations like this, what they do weekly, and we keep showing up and we keep sharing our stories. When you talk to somebody in Atlanta, when you talk to somebody in Florida, when you talk to somebody across the globe, guess what? You're carrying me with you. You're carrying Zach with you. You're carrying Justin with you. You're carrying Michael with you. You're carrying Fannie Lou Hamer with you. You're carrying Harriet Tubman with you. You're carrying George Washington Carver with you. We're all with you at all times. We're all fighting together, even if we can't be in the same place. And it's that spirit that keeps me going, because a lot of the times, like right now, I'm in the room by myself, but I know I have a multitude of people who are behind me. So thank you for being one of those people. And believe me, when I leave this room today, I'm going to be taking you with me, and I'm going to be using your examples when I'm talking, because you have educated me tonight. So thank you.
I appreciate your leadership, Roishetta.
Yeah, and Mr. Akinchile, I also wanted to say something because I thought you brought up a very good point about Cop City and the forest defenders in Atlanta. And what we need to realize in this environmental movement, when we look at the #1 people who are targeted by corporate interests, who are targeted by state powers for violence, that is environmental activists. That's environmental activists in the Gulf South, but more importantly, it's environmental activists in the global South. And so when you look at people that are standing up for indigenous rights in the Amazon jungle in Central America, those are the people that are really truly putting their lives on the line for Mother Earth. And so I think we need to be very, very real with ourselves. You don't have to, not everyone is willing to make those kinds of personal sacrifices, and that is absolutely okay. But I think we do have to your point, be very, very real about the powers that we're up against, because we are truly in the fight for our lives and the fight for our people and planet. But what I will say is that, what I will just add to that very, very briefly is that what we're learning to do is build solidarity and scale up our movements. And so between March 18th and March 25th, we're organizing a week of action across the state of Louisiana, where we have communities in 5 different parishes across South Louisiana who are all affected by environmental racism and the petrochemical industry coming together to stand up, build solidarity, and lift our voices up. And so we know as organizers that there are 2 kinds of power. We have organized money, which is the power that the oil and gas companies and the banks that back them hold against us. And we have organized people. And so our job is to organize our people, and that's where our power comes from. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, Zach, because you said you wanted to add something to that. And then I will pass it. If it's okay, if we go a couple minutes over time, if you got to drop off, that's all right. We won't be offended. But Zach, I wanted to give you space to respond to Mr. Akinchile. And then Robert wanted to make a comment as a native of Southwest Louisiana, as a lifelong Louisiana resident. And then Pastor Manning, if it's all right, I will turn it over to you to close out at that point. So Zach, how about you kick us off?
Yeah, just like one very short and specific answer, something that I've found really powerful in my work, is that I'm a really proud and honored member of Progressive Workers Union. And so that is a lot of where I bring my sense that labor and environmental justice are essentially deeply intertwined inextricably. And so we've unionized 4 other environmental workplaces in the past couple of years. We're trying to transform the environmental movement as a whole across the US, but also to use our labor power and solidarity around the world. We've done that to oppose war in Iran under the Trump administration, and we're currently organizing internally, member of a committee called the Palestine Solidarity Committee within Progressive Workers Union, and exposing how Israeli occupation is also a form of environmental and climate injustice. And so I think that, labor power is really, really important to this work. And it's exciting and an honor for me to be at the intersection of the environmental justice movement and the labor movement. It's called Progressive Workers Union. So if anyone wants to learn more, feel free to reach out. I'll give you my email address for that, because let's not do that with Sierra Club email address. It's not Sierra Club business. Thank you.
Robert, I want to invite you to share some words, and then you can pass it over to, actually, Miss Belinda had her hand raised as well. And so I think what we'll do is, Robert, you can share some comments. We'll pass it over to Belinda, and then Reverend Manning can close us.
Thank you, Michael. I will keep it brief. I was born in Lake Charles and raised mostly in Cameron Parish. Most of the time, my father was taking me away during the school year to other places like Germany and Panama. He was in the Army. I remember when Cameron Parish was beautiful. It was a place to ride horses, to take care of my great-grandfather's sheep. There were no fears about the air and the water the way there are now. 18 years after I was born in Lake Charles, on the same day, my brother was born. It was this week. I'm now 80. He's now 62. He was raised completely in Lake Charles. He grew up with asthma. He had many health problems, which I did not have. I moved away at the age of 22 when I was faced with the necessity of living there. But I was watching my grandparents' generation live to be 90, and my parents' generation dying in their 60s. And I knew something was wrong, but I was totally overwhelmed by the propaganda of the Louisiana story, which the oil companies foisted on us to make us believe they were our beneficiaries. There's one scene in the Louisiana story, which is in French. It's when the father buys his son a rifle. A smattering of propaganda worthy of Goebbels. And it got to my people. And they believed the petrochemical industry was their salvation, and many of them still do. Because of tonight, because of hearing Zach and Roishetta and their passion and their correct analysis, which I wish I would have had at their age, I've decided that I'm not going to take my daughter's invitation to move from Louisiana away from all this to the safety of Washington, D.C. And that's the reason I wanted to speak, because I wanted to make the public statement. It's difficult to say. It would be nice to forget it all. But there is too much that has been beautiful here. The music, the people. There really is no place else I want to live. So I want to thank you all for working so hard for it and for leading me tonight to make this decision. Thank you.
Wow, Robert, thank you so much for that. That was absolutely just beautiful. Really, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, yes, Rosetta, that was beautiful. I mean, it's really hard to speak after that. Thank you so much, Robert, for your heartfelt words in regards to Louisiana. I think that just thanking you, and I want to say to Zach and Rosetta, you are amazing. How much we really appreciate you all. This have been very, very informative. It just really uplifts my spirit to know that young people like yourself is on the front lines to bring this type of information to Justice and Beyond, to help educate and inform us, and also, our support that you guys are doing just amazing work, and we just want to salute you for that. And I know that, we have to unite on these efforts. We cannot, risk the chance of, what Brother Cereo was talking about, that, we're winning this fight. We are winning this fight, but it's going to take all of us, and the more and on a more powerful and united front than ever before, because we are winning. And that the powers that be are pushing back because they know that we're winning. So I just want to say I unite with you all. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. And I hope that you reach out to me, because we have so many fronts and so many, things that we have to fight now on. And, I know that you guys are on the forefront of the environmental fight, but there are so many other fights. And this is an election year. We're in a real good place right now to make some drastic changes of what our future should look like in leadership. So I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you so very much for this very profound presentation.
Pastor Manning, I'm going to pass it over to you to close us out. And thank you, Belinda, for those words as well. Just a lot of powerful comments. So thank you everyone for your very engaged participation. I do want to just, before I pass it over to Pastor Manning, I do want to just let you all know that we are taking action as a movement between March 18th and March 25th. We will be organizing a week of action for climate justice. We have actions planned from Lake Charles, New Iberia, Ascension Parish, New Orleans East, New Orleans, Louisiana, and the 9th Ward, and St. Bernard Parish. And we really need everybody. And we're trying to build a statewide movement to fight for environmental justice. And so I will pass it over to you, Reverend Manning, but I just encourage everybody, if you're interested in joining the Week of Action, to fill out this little RSVP form that I just dropped in the chat.
Thank you, Michael. I am overwhelmed and blown away by so many aspects of this conversation tonight. Michael, thank you for your excellent job of moderating this conversation and the experience and passion that you bring to it. Roishetta, words cannot express how blessed we are to hear your voice and for the work that you're doing and for always including us in that work and indeed taking us with you. Zach, thank you for your powerful voice and for your commitment to this work and for being here tonight as well too. Just want to make it clear that, we are not hopeless. There are many victories that many people on the front line have accomplished this year. Number one is Formosa is not coming to St. James. We celebrate that. And we are so excited about that and many other victories. We're excited that concerned citizens of St. John has been advocating that the students of 5th Ward Elementary be moved away from the Dinka plant, and now Dinka is being also sued, and because of the EPA is being sued because the EPA is being sued because of the lack of holding accountable for the harmful toxins that they're emitting in terms of chloroprene. And so we are winning, and we need to concentrate on the fact that we have a human infrastructure. While our infrastructure that we see every day is being distressed and compromised and destroyed, we are stronger with our human infrastructure that we're able to build together. So a house divided cannot stand. So let's band together, and stand up together and show up together. With that said, also, there's many events that you can be a part of. One is at my church, March 11th at 11:45. It will start with lunch. We're doing a presentation on Pakistan. Pakistan is right now covered and flooded with water. 33 million people are displaced right now. 2 million homes destroyed. The land is destroyed, so cattle cannot live. It is a direct result of climate change. Imagine if that same thing happened to Louisiana, and it may happen to Louisiana. So we need to educate ourselves and be aware that an ocean cannot separate us, that false lines on maps cannot separate us, that we are one humanity, and that we need to be aware of it, that this impacts of climate change impacts us all. And most of all, we need to educate our children, let them know, bring them along, tell them about the fight and the crisis and the war that we're now in. With that said, I'm going to ask if there's any other announcements. Let me draw your attention to one thing that I saw in the chat. There is an LSU student that has offered up a petition. Please go back through the chat, sign on to that petition, take action, be involved in the movement, be involved in the change. Also too, let me ask if there are any other announcements that anybody has in terms of events that we need to show up for. Any events?
I have one, Pastor Manning. So on Earth Day, April 22nd in Southwest Louisiana, we are having a huge event. We're gonna have hopefully Sharon Levine will be one of the speakers. John Beer from Port Arthur, Texas. Our headliner is gonna be Jane Fonda. We're trying to get Rev Yearwood, but we're gonna have a big event highlighting the injustices in Southwest Louisiana. You all have heard the story of Mossville, Louisiana. We're gonna have some citizens from Mossville who were forced out of their homes into North Lake Charles, which is predominantly Black. They have no grocery stores, very little access to public transportation. Homes haven't been repaired since the hurricane. You know the stories because you all live in the same type of communities. So we're going to talk about that and the more than 20 LNG projects that we have proposed along the Gulf Coast, more than 20, with a massive amount of those being proposed for right there in Southwest Louisiana. So we invite all of you to come. We don't like to just focus on the bad in Southwest Louisiana. We like to bring some joy to every event. So we are going to march, we're going to teach, and then we're going to enjoy some good Zydeco music and some good Southwest Louisiana food. So we invite all of you to come. If you need help with transportation, getting there, gas to get there, let us know. We want you to be there, so we will do everything that we have to do to get you there. Again, that's April 22nd in Lake Charles.
Thank you, Roishetta. Anyone else?
Yes, I got an announcement. I'm with the African People's Socialist Party. Right now, we were assaulted by the FBI on July 29th. We've been deemed as working with Russia, like Russia is telling us what to do, and also being called, some of us, co-conspirators. Chairman Omali Yesatella is an 81-year-old man. The party's been in existence since the loss of the Black Panther movement, the revolutionary struggle. And what I did, I put it in the chat. Hands off of Uhuru, hands off of Africa. It's in the chat. I'm gonna ask that everyone go in there as well, sign a petition. And also there are positions that most of us here have expertise in. When we mention working as a collective, we better work as a collective. There is definitely a run to depopulate this planet, and we're the victims. Uhuru. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Any other announcements? All right. Also know that March.
Pastor Manning, I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
Go ahead.
Also, I'm gonna put a link for a Zoom meeting for the hands-off Uhuru emergency meeting. And I would like for people to go and register. It's for tomorrow night. It's going to be at 6 o'clock Central tomorrow night. It's very important when we think about that the activists and the leaders of these type of endeavors on the forefront. So it's very important that we unite with the Hands Off Africa, Hands Off Uhuru movement, because if, when they come for us, you know, which they will, we need to be united with everyone. So we need to unite with them while they're going through this attack, and so that we can all be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to helping our people. So I just want to put that link in the chat. One more thing, Pastor Manning.
Yes.
Also, very important that I want to ask Roishetta, is there any kind of way we can have buses coming from communities to the event in April? Is there any kind of way we can support buses coming from various communities around the state?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My organization, Vessel Project, can help with that. Greenpeace is also offering financial assistance, and some other organizations. So if you can, we can talk further about this. My email, phone number, and everything is in the chat. But if you can get some people together from your areas and your connections, and we can see how many people want to come down, we will help. We will get those buses to bring people here. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, let's get people there to that Earth Day event. Also, too, March the 25th is the grand opening of one of two first community lighthouses that are equipped with commercial grade solar panels and battery backup storage, so that in the event of a widespread power outage, the needs of the community can continue to be served and met. That lighthouse is Broadmoor Community Church, where I am pastor. Come out and join us March 25th. That's March 25th at 2:00 p.m. for the grand opening celebration. Congressman Troy Carter and many other officials will be on hand to speak and celebrate that with us. We'll also go over to Bethlehem Lutheran Church on Washington Avenue, which is the second of two community lighthouses that are on target to open up right now. So, and also finally, if you want a good plate of fish for Friday, come to Broadmoor Community Church for our fish fry. Friday at 5 o'clock, 2021 South Dupree. Get you a good plate of fish for $15 on this Friday at 5 o'clock. Any other announcements?
I'm in for that. Wow.
Oh, tell other people too. Any other announcements? All right, I'm not hearing anything, so we're going to close in prayer. Sister Belinda, would you close us in prayer?
Absolutely, Pastor. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Most gracious Father, we just thank you and praise your most holy name. We thank you, Father, for each and every person that took out the time of their busy schedules to be a part of this very important and necessary meeting on tonight. Father, we just thank you, Lord, that you would give us and equip us with everything we need and advance us to build your kingdom. In Jesus' name, we thank you. Amen.
Amen. So much, and we wish Robert a happy 80th birthday. We're so glad that God kept him safe and strong and still here. And we pray for Ben Gordon as well, too, who let us know that he's going through cancer treatment, and for all those cancer and are sick at this time and are grieving the loss of loved ones as well, too. And indeed, our whole entire state. God bless y'all. Remember, the way to action is also
Pastor Manning, one thing I have to say.
Yes.
Touch one, touch all. Touch one, touch all. Go ahead.
Amen. Amen. Ashe. God bless you, everybody. Be safe, be loving, be kind. We'll see you next time.
Ooh.
Ooh, thank you, everyone.
Thanks for moderating. Thanks.